Welcome back to the fifth quarter podcast. Today we're going to be discussing the NFL trade deadline as we wrap up that. I'm joined once again by my buddy JC. JC, thanks for coming in.
What's up, fellas? We got a good show for you tonight. We're talking trade deadline. We're going to sprinkle a little bit of fantasy. It's about as good of a show as you're going to find anywhere on the internet.
We are filming the day after the NFL trade deadline, and one of the craziest trade deadlines we've seen, definitely one of the better ones in the last 10 years. We'll start off with a trade that happened a few days before the deadline, but by the deadline nonetheless. The Miami Dolphins trade edge rusher Jalen Phillips to the Philadelphia Eagles for a third-round pick. JC, what are your thoughts on this trade from both sides? Maybe start with Miami and then on the Eagles side.
I guess, honestly, to me, there's times where I don't understand why a team would value a pick, especially in the third, fourth round, over a player who's already established. I feel like this is one of those times, like, they're going to need to hit big somewhere deep in the draft to get value, and it just seems like a little bit more of a gamble. From the Eagles side, I feel like it's smart because being able to just simply give up their third, bring in an edge, and like finally get that defensive line back up to their where they've been in the past. I like the trade.
Yeah, so back in the summer, this before the season starts, Philadelphia, coming off a Super Bowl win, still had 13 draft picks. This is a Howie Roseman masterclass. Before this trade, the Eagles still had 3 third-round picks because they will get a comp pick from losing, I believe it is Milton Williams, who did sign with the Patriots. So you trade that pick, you still have 2 second-round picks, and you have a great player who, when healthy, is phenomenal. So I think this was a great job by Philadelphia. By Miami side, it sucks not being able to draft a good player. I believe Jalen Phillips was a late first-round pick, if I'm not mistaken. So being able to have that homegrown talent and not being able to sign them and keep them past their rookie contract, that stinks on that side. But I can also understand it from one, this team's going to have to rebuild after this year. Already lost their GM. They're more than likely going to have a new head coach, maybe a new quarterback. So using that to rebuild. And also, he did have an injury history. So it is, I think, a fair trade on both sides. But for the Eagles, obviously, it looks better because they are going to be competing for a Super Bowl this year, whereas the Dolphins are going to be rebuilding. So I honestly think this is a great win-win trade for both sides. But that's my thoughts on that first trade that happened a few days before the deadline. Another trade that happened a few days before the deadline, maybe not as impactful, but a big name player. The Baltimore Ravens, through their very injured secondary, trade cornerback Jair Alexander, former All-Pro with the Green Bay Packers. They traded him and a 7th-round pick once again to the Eagles for a 6th-round pick. So just that late round pick swap, the 6th versus 7th. JC, what are your brief thoughts on this trade?
This is where I'd honestly say that the Eagles win more clear cut. First of all, you're swapping picks from a sixth round to a seventh round. And I get that that means something, but situationally, they're bringing in a guy like Jair Alexander, super beloved DB. He's had a great career. All he needs to do is be good for the Eagles for 1 to 2 years for them to get their value out of that pick. And I think that's exactly what he's there to do.
Yeah, so Jair Alexander, for the fans at home, he has not played a single game this year with the Ravens after signing with them in free agency. But he's expected to come back as soon as he gets to the Eagles. So the Eagles haven't had to deal with this. They get to swap for him for a late round pick swap right when he's supposed to be healthy. And they already have Cooper DeJean there. They already have was it Blankenship? So they have talent already there. So this is a great depth piece. Again, just swapping those late round picks with how many picks they have. Once again, it's a great trade for the Eagles. And honestly, on the Ravens side, doesn't make much sense. I mean, you draft the guy, he's finally, or not drafted, you sign the guy, he's finally healthy again. And now you're just trading him away as soon as he becomes healthy for a late round pick swap. I don't I don't really understand this trade from the Ravens perspective, maybe just trying to get something, but nonetheless, we can move on to the next trade, a trade that has been brewing for a while. Jacoby Myers, Raiders wide receiver, traded to the Jaguars for a 4th and a 6th round pick. Jacoby Myers requested a trade. I'm not sure if it was in the offseason or early this season, but requested a trade quite some time ago. He's in the last year of a 3-year, $33 million contract. I know that because the Patriots decided they give the exact same contract to Juju Smith-Schuster years ago, and that did not pan well out for my Patriots. But nonetheless, Jakobi Meyers is now a part of the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are looking to not only win the playoff or win their division and go to the playoffs, but looking to make some noise with first-year head coach Liam Cohen. Once again, Jakobi Meyers traded for a 4th and a 6th round pick. JC, your thoughts?
It honestly, I didn't know how much this was in the works, but it honestly seems to me like the Jaguars are trying to bring in a guy that can free up their wide receiver room and get things going the way that we thought it was going to be. The Jags receivers not really performing this year, maybe from game to game, but overall not doing much. Maybe they just view that problem as in guys are getting too much attention when they don't have to be. I think a guy like Jakobi Meyers is super underrated. He's probably going to go over, fit in, mesh well with the offense, and be adaptable. I'm a fan of the trade.
Yeah, I think with the struggles that Brian Thomas Jr. has had and with the Jaguars, how well they've been doing actually with that, I think they definitely needed a piece, definitely a wide receiver piece or even a tight end piece. Because, they don't have Evan Engram like they did. He was their leading receiver as a tight end even years ago. So I like it from that perspective, but a 4th and a 6th round pick for an aging receiver on the last year of his contract. Yes, the contract is cheap, which is great for this year, but they didn't agree to a contract extension yet. So maybe if they did a 1 or 2 year extension on it, I would like this trade. But a 4th and a 6th for a team that no one really thinks is going to win the Super Bowl, at least as of right now, I don't think they're better than the Chiefs, the Ravens, even the Bills, even in the Patriots for that, the Broncos. I just feel like that was too much giving up. So on the Raider side, a receiver who wanted to leave, you already have Brock Bowers, Jency. You don't need him as much, and you get a 4th and a 6th round pick for a guy who's going to walk away in free agency. Love this pick. I love this trade from the Raiders' perspective. Moving on to the next trade, another wide receiver trade. I love this trade. A very fun player here. The Saints trade wide receiver Rashid Shaheed, best name maybe in the NFL, to the Seattle Seahawks for a 4th and a 5th round pick. Sam Darnold gets another weapon to add next to Jackson Smith-Njigba. JC, your thoughts?
To me, it's a similar trend to the trade that we talked about before, except the fact that JSN's already having a monster season. He's already putting up numbers. To me, having a guy like Rashid Shaheed, he's always downfield. He's always looking to catch the deep ball. So not only is going to be a big playmaker that can change games just with his style and ability to bring in a catch from deep, but honestly, I think that it's going to have that effect to take your team from, let's say, Bengals with Jamar Chase to Jamar Chase and T Higgins when they work together, when they both elevate, being able to be less covered, less pressed. Same thing with Jordan Jefferson or with Justin Jefferson is when Addison is not on the field, or at least when he's not having good numbers, it just puts pressure on him. It doesn't let him to play in a pure form.
Yeah, I love this trade from the Seahawks perspective. I'll go start with that before I get into the Saints perspective. Listen, Jackson Smith-Njigba, I know through the first 4 games, I'm not sure what it is now, but through the first 4 games, he literally had the most percentage-wise for target share of any receiver ever through 4 games. So Jackson Smith-Njigba is getting targeted insanely. So this will be huge because with him getting targeted so much, having another a better wide receiver, it'll 1 help Jackson Smith-Njigba, but 2 also help Sam Darnold spread out the ball to Rashid Shaheed, who is a very, very capable wide receiver, a great wide receiver too for any team almost besides maybe the Bengals. So from the Seahawks perspective, also, unlike the Jaguars, I believe the Seahawks are in a much more open conference. I think I would say as of right now, the Seahawks, the Buccaneers, the Packers, and the Lions are probably the 4 best teams in the NFC. You can maybe say the Eagles too, but there is no clear-cut one in the NFC. It is extremely open, and a team like the Seahawks is definitely capable of running the NFC this year. So from that perspective, already having a top 3 wide receiver, which JSN has been this year, it's a great addition, a 4th and a 5th, nothing too crazy there. I love this trade from the Seahawks perspective. I think it's a perfect fit for that team. And I think this actually does make them significantly better on the offensive side of the ball and a real NFC threat from this. From the Saints' perspective, I think it's a kind of like how we described the Dolphins earlier. It's a team that's probably going to be drafting in the top 3. They're going to have to rebuild. They don't have a real answer at quarterback, and a 4th and 5th round pick for a rebuilding team. If one of those 2 picks is a starting caliber player, that's very good. Rashid Shaheed has a cheap contract. He was on the last year of his contract, only $5 million on it. His contract is probably going to be 20 million per year for multiple years going forward, which you're going to have to choose either him or Chris Olave to do that unless you wanted to be in a Bengals situation. So I think this is another huge win-win. Obviously, if the Seahawks do run the table and go to the Super Bowl, you'd say the Seahawks won this trade, but just like that Dolphins-Eagles trade back then, I think from the perspective of each team, this is as much of a win-win as it can be. Moving on, the Jets made the biggest splashes with their 2 major sells. We'll get into the first one. Both of these trades happened on the trade deadline day, just hours before the trade deadline at 4:00 Eastern. We'll start with the less big one, I guess you could say, of the 2. They're both pretty big, but the Jets trade defensive tackle Quinnen Williams, their former top 5 pick, to the Dallas Cowboys. Interesting trade here for next year's, not this upcoming draft, but the 2027 draft 1st round pick, and a 2026, this upcoming draft 2nd round pick, as well as former 1st round pick Mazi Smith. JC, your thoughts from both perspectives of this massive trade?
Honestly, I think the Jets fleeced, but that's just situationally because when you're sending over a guy like Quinnen Williams to the Cowboys, they're going to get value. And that's not just that situation where they got in a weird spot and had to make a move. The Cowboys are pretty overrated, but there wasn't any gaping holes in their defense necessarily. Now, nonetheless, it's a win-win scenario in terms of it allows the Jets to be forward-looking and give their fans something to be excited about. And also, it allows the Cowboys fans and what they're doing in their office to be more involved and to understand that they can start whatever. It's a really hated on team when things go bad. It seems like they get so much negative sentiment, especially from fans. But it's just showing the difference between how you're going to prioritize the short term and the now versus the long term. And situationally, when you look at it that way, it makes perfect sense.
I think there's a very good situational caveat that I have not seen any other sports analysts describe. The reason that Mazi Smith is included is obviously you're trading a defensive tackle for a defensive tackle, one that's better than the other. But listen, Mazi Smith was drafted 1st round for the Cowboys specifically to stop the Eagles' tush push. That's why he was drafted. They had a lot of holes that year, and they took a defensive tackle because Jerry Jones publicly said, we need to stop the tush push, which obviously, if any position, it's going to be D tackle, if not edge, to stop this. Mazi Smith wasn't the answer there. I don't even know if there's an answer there. If it is maybe Quinnen Williams, one of the best defensive tackles in the league. But that is the specific reason. And this is doubling down on the tush push, saying we need to stop this. They traded away maybe an edge player that could have helped Micah Parsons, but I don't really think it's going to have as much of an impact than a defensive tackle would. So Jerry Jones is doubling down on taking this. He trades away Mazi Smith. So if we really look at it from that perspective, we're talking about 2 first-round picks and a second-round pick just to stop the tush push. I would understand that, but I think that's a little too much. And not only that, from a draft capital being too much value, but also the Cowboys are not a Super Bowl threat, let alone probably won't even make the playoffs this year. So from that perspective, it doesn't make sense. Not only that, but then Quinnen Williams is going to have a hefty contract. So from the Dallas Cowboys perspective, I get understanding the tush push, but when you look at it from the caveat of this is just to stop the tush push, the price that you're paying for that is too much. It could be invested in other areas, which would be much more proper overall as a defense. So from the Dallas Cowboys perspective, I think that's an interesting caveat that I haven't seen anyone discuss, and I don't think it makes sense for the Cowboys. I think a lot of people said that, but especially from that perspective. From the Jets perspective, I love this. I wouldn't say love, maybe like. they trade away a great player who one of the few picks that they've drafted. We'll get into the other, top 5 pick they drafted that they traded away, but it sucks for the Jets. I mean, it sucks for the players in that locker room who see this and say, well, this is what happens. This guy's drafted top 5. This other player that we'll discuss got drafted top 5, and they got paid and then they got traded immediately when the team sucked. So they are going into full rebuild mode. We'll see if Aaron Glenn is the captain of that rebuild ship, but it just has to suck as a fan, and it has to suck for the players inside that locker room going, I could do all this, get extended, and they'll still ship me out the door. So don't love this trade on either side, but I can understand more from the Jets' perspective and rebuilding towards the future. But that's enough about defensive tackles. I know Quinn Williams is a great player, but people do not care about defensive tackles as much as they do as cornerbacks. The Jets trade star All-Pro cornerback Sauce Gardner to the Indianapolis Colts for 2 first-round picks and wide receiver A.D. Mitchell. JC, your thoughts on this trade?
Now, today when I heard about this, I was at work. Somebody read it off their phone, and I just heard first-round pick this year, first-round pick next year. And I didn't even realize that A.D. Mitchell was included in the trade initially, right? And even without that, I really liked it from the Jets' perspective because the Jets have been making a lot of moves lately, bringing in Rodgers, bringing in Fields, just kind of experimenting and trying things out. But they're starting to realize, and they probably realized this a couple weeks ago, that it's time for a rebuild. This paired with the other trade that we just talked about, it's exactly what they needed. This is something you see on ESPN, you read in a group chat, and then you text your buddies. 2-3 years from now, the Jets are turning the whole thing around. It gets everybody excited, including non-Jets fans. And I honestly think what I mentioned earlier at the start of the podcast about trading picks for players, I think it's different when you're bringing in a first round pick because you're going to have the ability to trade that pick again because everybody else wants it. Maybe situationally, guys that you can get later in the draft and then find some type of deal, work it out. It's got that name value first round, a much higher guarantee on who you're going to be able to bring in. I think the Jets take this and are laughing all the way to the bank.
Yeah, I like this more from the Jets' perspective, and here's why. Yes, he's an all-pro cornerback. Yes, it's a great addition to a team that already has Cam Bynum, former Viking, great dancer. But I can understand trading. So the Colts are, 7-2?
Yes.
So trading a first-round pick, if you're the Colts this year, I mean, that's a no-brainer. This pick is going to be at least in the 20s. So I can honestly, that's a great trade. But next year's first-round pick, I'm a little skeptical of trading that away, as well as A.D. Mitchell. I'm not overly critical of the A.D. Mitchell trade. I mean, they just drafted Tyler Warren. He's been a stud. They have Jonathan Taylor. They have Michael Pittman. They have Josh Downs. So not a huge piece, more of a depth piece. But next year's first-round pick, listen, anything can happen in the NFL. Your quarterback could get injured. Jonathan Taylor could get injured. Micah Pittman, Tyler Warren, any of these players could get injured. Even Sauce Gardner. I mean, cornerbacks are super susceptible to any lower body injury. So trading next year's first round pick, I think that's a little skeptical because, the Colts are a team that no one expected to be this good this year. They could, have an injury or two or be like the Commanders this year and just have a really bad year and not be able to use next year's first round pick. So I think it was a little bit of an overpay. I would have liked to see them maybe do a second round next year or something, but that's the price you got to pay when you get a star player at the deadline, especially a player who's beloved by the New York fan base, kind of beloved by the media because of his name being Sauce. But I'm glad the Colts are actually making crazy trades and really trying to maximize their potential this year. I think especially with Chris Ballard, he was on the hot seat as a GM going into this year, and with the resurgence of Daniel Jones, him signing him as a free agent and the way that it's been going, Jonathan Taylor, years ago they were skeptical about giving him a big contract, him performing to that, the draft of Tyler Warren. I think his seat is safe now, and he says, I'm ready to gamble these picks away. So this year's first round pick, who cares? You're a good team. You're going to make the playoffs. That pick isn't as valuable. But it is a very good draft this year. So I think that is going to help the Jets if they have, the first overall pick and, pick number 28 per se. So from that perspective, um, I do think it is a win, but let's just say overall, just speak on the Jets overall. I think the Jets, and this coming from a Patriots fan, I think the Jets killed it. I'm not saying that trading away star players is the key to success, but I think rebuilding wise, this is a very strong draft class this upcoming year. Not maybe as much in the quarterback area, but very good when it comes to offensive line. One very good edge rusher out of Miami if they elect to take that with their first or second overall pick, whatever it ends up being. So we will see kind of where the chips fall when the season's over and the draft picks are finalized for what the Jets have. But I think rebuilding through the draft and the way that they're doing it with stacking all these picks, are they going to hit on all these picks? No, but could they make trades? Could they, draft some really good role player starters? Yes. So I think they're being very, very smart in the way that they're retooling themselves and rebuilding for the future. And as a Patriots fan, that sucks to say, but they're obviously going to need to get a quarterback in a division that has Josh Allen, the reigning MVP, and Drake May, who could be this year's MVP. So the Jets are probably 2 years away from that happening, but I like that how they are building their team, and they're going to have to build it by drafting correctly with the surplus of picks that they've acquired this year. Moving on from the trade deadline, we are halfway through the season now. Most teams in the NFL have played 8 or 9 games, depending on their bye week. So we are really at the exact halfway mark of the season. So, me and JC are going to look at what the NFL division standings look like right now and give you our thoughts on what we think the winners of these divisions are as we predict them through the halfway part of the season. We'll start with the AFC East, where my Patriots are leading the division by 1 game. They played 9 games. They are 7-2, whereas the Bills are 6-2, played 8 games, but lost the head-to-head. It's really just a 2-horse race in this. So, JC, I know you're a big Josh Allen fan, and how can you not be? I mean, I like Josh Allen. He likes to spend his off seasons in my hometown. So, also have a brother that's a big Josh Allen and Bills fan. So, it is a house divided with the Patriots and Bills with my brother. But nonetheless, JC, Bills, Patriots, really the only 2 options in the AFC East. Who do you have winning that division as of today?
Well, unfortunately, I have to say the Bills, and here's why. The 3 favorites in this order, 1, 2, 3 for MVP are Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, and then Drake May. Believe it or not, he's the Vegas 3rd favorite, sitting just behind Mahomes to win MVP this season. But the fact of the matter is, if I'm going to go out and say these teams are both great, they're both killing it, quarterback play looks good, injuries aren't too bad, and I'm just going to go out blanket statement who's going to win the division, I have to say it's the Bills. And the main reason is because I still think the Bills are going to win the Super Bowl, or at least play in it. And by that, it's just process of elimination. I mean, you wouldn't be surprised if the Patriots won the decision, but if you just had to make a choice, seeing the way the last 3 seasons have gone for the Bills, I think they're more likely to keep it up.
Yeah, I think that if Patriots fans or maybe just a consistent viewer of this show, I'm going to say the Bills are going to win the division here. And for those people that consistently watch this show, and they might start to think that I'm a super pessimistic Patriots fan, and that's not the impression that I want to give. I understand it, but I'm not trying to be pessimistic. I like to say that I'm trying to be realistic, but the Patriots do not have as much talent on their team. Josh Allen makes less mistakes, just like Josh Allen was years ago. Drake May is. So he limited his turnovers, and he's making way less turnovers than he did last year, but he's still not on that level of superhero ability that Josh Allen was. And I'm not saying it's a huge difference. I mean, he is the 3rd, like you said, the 3rd highest MVP odds for a reason. Drake May has been a stud. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying Josh Allen has shown that he can do the clutch plays. Drake May hasn't had to do that, nor has he had to play as difficult as a schedule. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Patriots win this division, not just because they have the lead, but if you look at their schedule, it's very favorable. They play the Ravens, they play the Buccaneers this upcoming week. and they have to face the Bills one more time, although it's at home. So outside of those 3 games, the Patriots have a very favorable schedule. So I wouldn't be surprised if just because of that process that they win the division. But it is very close. And if the Bills do end up winning that head-to-head matchup, that'll fare very well for their division chances. But nonetheless, we can move on to the next division. We'll stay in the AFC. We'll head up north to the AFC North. The Ravens storming back 2 games behind the Steelers. The Steelers sit at 5-3. Ravens sit at 3-5. And I guess it's not completely out, but the Bengals at 3-6 off a heartbreaking loss, and the Browns at 2-6. So, JC, a 2 division lead here, a very big lead. Who do you got winning the AFC North as of today?
Well, if you asked me this a couple weeks ago, I might have said the Ravens despite the slow start that they had. But now I think it's just too late, and I think that the Steelers are too consistent. I think they're going to keep it up because obviously in the whole Mike Tomlin era, isn't he known for never having a below 500 record in season?
Yeah, I think he even went 8-8 and 1 year. So he always gets, I guess, in this either 8 wins and a tie or 9 wins. So
And that's the thing. It's a consistent team. It's a consistent coach. There's no red flags, screaming reasons on why this wouldn't keep up. I think the Ravens are probably going to finish out the season strong with the return of Lamar Jackson, but it's not going to be enough to catch the Steelers.
I'm actually going to defer from you there. I think the Ravens will end up taking this division. They're finally healthy on defense, and we've seen what a tremendous difference it was. They were on pace originally through the first 6 games to let up 600 points. Unreal. They get Roquan Smith back. They get Kyle Hamilton back, and they've been a completely different defense. And then they get Lamar Jackson back on offense, and he throws 4 touchdowns in his first game back on primetime. This team is a completely different team than what they were the first few games of the year. I think the big factor is these teams haven't played each other. They're going to have to play each other twice. And if the Ravens took both of those, I mean, we're talking about it being even with the other slate of games determining it. So I think that the Ravens will end up taking this division. But I did like what I saw from the Steelers. Not against the Packers, but I like how their defense is finally starting to gel together. So A-Rod has kind of been carrying the team for the first few games. So I'd like to see the defense coming back, the Ravens defense coming back, Lamar Jackson coming back. So I like the Ravens to still end up sneaking by. I think the Steelers should have widened this gap by another game. I would take them, but with 2 meetings left, the Ravens, I think they might sneak this one out. So we'll move on to the next division, the AFC South. The Colts and the Jaguars seem to be the front runners of this division, but you can't count out the Texans at 3-5. But you can't count out the Titans at 1-8. So the Colts are 7-2, 2 games up on the 5-3 Jaguars, 4 games up on the 3-5 Texans. JC, if you had to pick today, who do you got winning the AFC South?
I got the Colts by a mile. It's a lot of the same reasons as before, except they don't necessarily have the same consistency and the same coaching in the years past. But where I stay the same is that it's too big of a lead. The Jaguars, while they have an all right record, that team has been shaky. Their offense isn't really looking like what it's supposed to be. I know there's a lot of maybe not wasted potential, but underutilized talent offensively speaking. And I just think simply put, 2 games at this point in the season, big lead. No reason to think that the Colts regress. I think they hold it and win.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see the Colts coming off their past game. I would just, with the addition that the Jaguars have made and the way that these teams are trending, I'm going to be curious to see how these teams fare the rest of the year. The Colts have taken some hiccups, but making a big trade. The Jaguars making a big trade, so we'll see how it fares. But if I had to pick one, I'm going to take the Colts just off the proof of the pudding, and I think they have the amount of star potential and star players on their team to at least stay consistent in what they've been doing. Maybe they don't finish with only 3 losses on the season. They might have 4 or 5, but I still think they end up taking this division. But we'll move on to the AFC West, probably the division that was the most loaded division at the start of the year. All very good teams, but at the bottom of the barrel, you have the 2-6 Las Vegas Raiders, who are not going to win this division. And at the top, you got the 7-2 Broncos, the 6-3 Chargers, and the 5-4 Chiefs. Only 2 games behind, and we'll face the Broncos twice. So, JC, in an extremely competitive division, in a very good quarterback division, very good coaching division. Who are you taking to win the AFC West through mid-season?
See, initially, I was gonna try and go for the super underdog, not so underdog Chiefs. But honestly, now I'm saying I think it's gonna be the Chargers. The Broncos just give me a weird feeling, even though I know they're looking good right now. But it's kind of a gut feeling, honestly. I just think something's weird. I just think something weird is gonna happen to Bo Nix. I think the Chargers are gonna turn up late season and win the division, and I hope that the Chiefs don't even come into contention. I hope they stay 3 games behind the lead at all times.
While I hope that that happens, I'm still going to take the Chiefs. They're trending in the right direction. I know they just lost, but they faced the Broncos 2 more times. They faced the Chargers 1 more time. And I don't know if you forgot or didn't see this, but one, Rashawn Slater tore his patella and was out at the beginning of the year, but Joe Alt is now also out for the year. So I cannot bet on the Chargers without an offensive line. This is the heart and soul of the Chargers. They also don't have Amarian Hampton or Najee Harris. So I cannot bet as well as they looked at the start of the year. There's always one really good team every year that just gets decimated by injuries. And at the biggest spots, I mean, we're talking about two. I'm not sure about all pro, but two guys who are all pro level talents at tackle. A great rookie running back who got injured and will come back at the end of the month, towards the end of the season, but a team that's just been decimated by injuries. Not again their fault, but this is a team that the best ability is availability, and you can only coach so much when you have this amount of injuries. But when it comes to the Broncos, listen, I really like the Broncos, but they're barely squeaking out dubs. They went on a game-winning field goal here. They win again on some game-winning field goal penalty against the Colts. I mean, they are squeaking out wins. They have a crazy 33-point comeback on the Giants. It's kind of like the Chiefs of last year, all these crazy one-score games that they win. So I will take the Chiefs solely for the fact that, one, the Chargers are super injured, and two, the Chiefs have to play the Broncos twice this year. And just like we discussed previously, if they win both of those, like we said with the Steelers and Ravens, they would be even, and the rest of the slate would determine who wins that division. So I'm going to take the Chiefs with how good they look. And I think they're going to win those matchups over the Broncos, which historically they've been very good against. But we'll move on. We'll move to the NFC. We'll start with the NFC East. The Eagles have a massive division lead. They sit at 6-2, where the next team is the Cowboys at 3-5-1. So what is that? 2.5 games back, I guess. We'll make this one quick, JC, because we already know the answer here.
It's going to be Eagles. Obviously, they're the best team in the division. Still one of the best teams in the league. If the Cowboys are your competition to cut a 2.5, with a bye week scenario, a 2/3 game deficit, I wouldn't bet on them, not even for a second. What do you got?
Yeah, I mean, the Eagles are probably going to win this division by 5 games. The Commanders aren't a threat to come back with no JD5. The Giants might play well and might even surpass the Cowboys, but they sit because of the bye week and whatnot. I think it's 3.5 games back. So the Eagles might win this division by 4 or 5 games. I really don't think there's any threat there with how their team is and how the Cowboys are. But it's too far of a lead for the Cowboys to come back, especially with the 31 ranked defense. But we'll move on to the NFC North. Your Vikings are somehow last in this division at 4-4, but only are, 1.5 games back on the top seeded Packers. So the Packers sit at 5-2-1. The Lions and Bears both sit at 5-3, and the Vikings sit at 4-4. Probably the most open division from what I'm seeing. With the bottom team is 500. These divisional matchups are going to mean everything. Very high possibility of a tiebreaker here. And the Packers having that tie is going to factor huge into this. But nonetheless, JC, who do you got winning the NFC North as of today?
For me, it's the Lions. I just remember the first 2 games of the season, I had this weird recency bias where I didn't think that they were going to bounce back, and I didn't think that they were going to be the powerhouse that we saw last year. But to me, the honest question is, is it the Lions or the Packers? I know the Bears are up there record-wise, but they just don't have what it takes. That's not the type of team you'd expect to even finish second in the NFC North. And just based off of what I've seen lately, just based off of what I know the Lions got going on, I'm taking them to win the division, sadly, over the Vikings.
Yeah, I'm actually going to agree with you here, and I'll take the Lions. I think it's going to be very close between them and the Packers. But with how well the Lions defense has been doing despite the injuries in history, having a healthy defense finally, and Terry and Arnold, I believe, I saw a statistic today where in the past 3 or 4 weeks, I think he's the third ranked cornerback. So him finally turning a corner, the Lions actually having a reliable cornerback and being able to play some man-on-man defense, I think that's huge. And them only being a half game back because of the tie situation with the Packers, and playing them one more time this season at home as well. I'm going to take the Lions here. No disrespect to the Bears, but I don't expect the Bears to actually compete for the division. Maybe a wild card, though. And that goes as well for the Vikings, as JJ McCarthy will deal with his rookie lumps that happen. But yeah, very close between the Lions and the Packers. Wouldn't be surprised if that tie game or whatnot factors into that and how close it is, or divisional records going into that. So I expect the Lions to win this maybe by a half game on the Packers. But again, very interesting divisional race, and can't wait to see that down the stretch. But moving on to the NFC South, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers sit at 6-2 with the Panthers at 5-4. So like 1.5 games back because they played an extra one. And the Falcons sitting at 3-5, some ways back, and the Saints 1-8, completely out of it. Your thoughts?
I'm probably gonna go Buccaneers. I'm not quite as excited about the Bucs as I was a couple weeks ago with how awesome Baker Mayfield was looking, but it seems like they're not going to have too much competition. I mean, the NFC South is really weak, and I guess the Panthers have been doing all right, but at the end of the day, it's the same scenario where if that team has a good season, that probably still doesn't consist of them finishing at the top of their season or at the top of their division. A good Panther season would be going like 60% win rate from here on out, and probably nothing more than that.
Yeah, I think it's almost a miracle in the way that the Panthers are 5-4 right now, with the injuries that have occurred and them squeaking out a win at the Packers. I think they're more of a wild card team. I don't think they have nearly as much talent that the Buccaneers have. And just like you, I'm not as high as I was on the Buccaneers a few weeks ago, but I still think that they'll take this division and they might have this wrapped up a little after Thanksgiving time. But we'll move on to the final division, the NFC West. You have the 6-2 Seahawks, 6-2 Rams, 6-3 49ers, and the Cardinals a little ways back at 3-5. Also, no Kyler Murray for the next 4 games as he's placed on IR. Again, this might be even better than the NFC North, but more of a 3-horse race, 3 teams with 6 wins, the 49ers with 1 more loss, having played 1 more game. Who do you got winning this division as of right now?
It's a tough choice. I honestly didn't realize that this one was so close. I actually didn't realize until I just checked the standings on how close this actually was. Let me go pull something kind of weird out here and say Niners to win the division, because I'm actually still high on Brock Purdy. They have every single plan to start Purdy when he comes back healthy, and it's been like that regardless of how good or bad Mac Jones has played. Dad bod Mac Jones. I feel like, Purdy's had his good moments, Purdy's had his bad moments, but that team's seeing something that we're not. And if you're going to have a guy that you've trusted as your starting quarterback for the last 2-3 years come back and take the reins of an already solid 6-3 team with a healthy McCaffrey, I think they're going to have enough to squeeze it out, maybe by only a game.
Yeah, when I look at these 3 teams, I could make a very compelling case for any of them winning the division. I could literally probably just flip a 3-sided dice and pick, because it's really that difficult from my perspective. I do want to take the Seahawks here, though. I think the only problem is they really do seem to struggle against the 49ers, and they will have to play them 1 more time. But I do like this the Seahawks, excuse me. And no disrespect to the Rams, Matthew Stafford is the fourth highest MVP odds according to Sportsbook. We'll get into that next, but I like the Seahawks. I like how they're rolling. I like their momentum, and now acquiring Rashid Shaheed and Jackson Smith-Njigba, having two great running backs in their system. I really like them, but you can't count out Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford. Obviously, they're a team that's more of a Super Bowl or bust every year with the aging of Matthew Stafford. But give me the Seahawks here. Maybe that's a little bit of bias, and I want them to win the division. But nonetheless, that is our division mid-season picks. We'll see how that all pans out. Will be fun to look back at this in 9 weeks when the season's over. But we'll move on to our final subject, everyone's favorite, the MVP. As of now, Josh Allen is the favorite. Mahomes is the second favorite. Drake May, the third favorite. Matthew Stafford, fourth. Baker, fifth. Sam Darnold, sixth. Matthew Stafford is fourth at plus 500, and Baker Mayfield is fifth at plus 1,700. So a big drop off there. So we'll just stick to the top four: Allen, Mahomes, May, and Stafford. JC, who is your pick as of today?
Well, I'm going to take the easy road out and say Josh Allen. If you look at the odds, just based off of what Vegas is saying, he's a standout favorite, more than 2 times likely than even the next guy to come and make a push for it. Plus, I know how these MVP award types of deals works. If the Bills finish the season with 4 or 5 losses, it's just going to help his case even more, rightfully so. I think we're going to see this team easily coast through the playoffs, at least the first and second round. And what you said earlier to touch on is that Josh Allen isn't necessarily making that many mistakes, and that's the beauty of a player like him is you're going to go out and you know what you're getting. Sometimes he throws for 400 yards, sometimes he throws 2 touchdowns and a pick, but he's not going to make as many mistakes, especially not in crucial moments.
Yeah, I think touching back on our preseason predictions, I picked Lamar at 1 and Mahomes at 2. And Lamar, by the odds, is somehow seventh. I mean, when he's been healthy, he's played phenomenal. He's just missed too many games. So, injuries, you can't really control that. But I'm going to stick back to my original picks, and I'll take Mahomes to win it. He has of these 4 candidates, he has he's tied for the most touchdowns and tied for the least amount of turnovers. It's not a big difference. These guys all have between 4 and 5 turnovers and 20 to 22 total touchdowns. So it is very close from that perspective. But, Mahomes did just get back Rashee Rice, and we've seen how great he was, which, not to toot ourselves on the horn too much, but we were both very correct in how much that would change their offense. Unfortunately, they did not trade for Breece Hall. It was confirmed that they offered maybe a 4th-round pick, or maybe that was the asking price, and the Chiefs did not have it. But that would have just made an even stronger case for that. So I will take Mahomes here. I think the Chiefs, like I said, are going to win the division. They'll storm, and their offense is the best it's been in several years since the Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce prime days. But that's going to do it for this episode. If you watched all the way, thank you for watching. Like the video, subscribe. Let us know in the comments what you thought. What are some topics you'd like us to discuss in the next video? Thank you for tuning in. We will see you in the very next episode.
Peace out, Fifth Quarter Media.